Welcome into the show, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us. Today, I've got a special guest. He's the NBA senior writer for The Ringer, Howard Beck. It's good to have you back on. How you been?
Great to see you. Thanks for having me back. Things are good. Things are good. Another fun NBA season. We are now officially in the dog days. January is generally speaking the dog days, right? Like the newness, the novelty of a new season is kind of worn off. And in this case, we had the in-season tournament for whatever that was worth, and that kind of gave the early part of the season something different to talk about, think about. And now it's January. We're a month out from the trade deadline. Obviously, the Knicks already made some noise, which we'll talk about. But we'll spend the next 4 weeks speculating and waiting for something big to happen. We'll see if anything does, and then it's kind of drift for a couple of weeks, get to All-Star break, and then after the All-Star break, like things start to pick up again, right? So, but right now is kind of that post Christmas lull. And teams have kind of settled into place for the most part. You kind of have a sense of where everybody stacks up. So it'll be interesting. I'm very curious to see where things go trade wise over the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, no doubt. It's been busy with the in-season tournament, a trade already, like you said, the Knicks getting ahead of the curve. Uh, it sort of snuck under the radar, Howard, that the NBA is in Paris right now. It wasn't until I was
Yeah.
talking to a fellow friend out there. But yeah, the East is really clogged right at the minute. The New York Knicks, had a huge injury blow with Mitchell Robinson going down. And Leon Rose in the front office decided, look, our defense, the Knicks defense, isn't where it needed to be. It was a tough part of the schedule after the in-season tournament, having to face the Bucks and then the Celtics, and then a couple of rough road games. But they pulled off this huge swing with the Raptors, in shock to everyone after the litigation talk still happening. How shocked were you that this trade happened with the Raptors and at this time? Given for me more so that the Raptors actually made a move, not that the Knicks
Yeah.
did.
No, yeah. The biggest shocker in all of that was that, oh, wow, the Raptors actually decided to trade one of the guys that we've all been talking about, speculating about for 2 years running. And yeah, the Raptors had been kind of in this weird limbo. I want to say ever since the championship in 2019, but not. It's more like the year or so after that. There's going to be some time you got to take. Kawhi leaves, and you got to figure out, well, what's next for us. And it just took them a long time to really pick a direction. And so the first shock of it all was that they traded OG Anunoby finally, right? The second big shock of it was that it happened in late December when often things are pretty quiet, like right in the midst of the holidays. Not often you see trades, especially a trade that of this magnitude. And this wasn't like a blockbuster; it's not a superstar, but like this is a pretty significant trade. So that was shock number two. Shock number three was and I had COVID at that moment, by the way. Like I was in bed watching this unfold and going like, so the shocks were probably like double for me because I was in this kind of weakened state trying to process this all going like, holy shit. The third shock of it was that after all the talk of the Raptors want 3 first round picks, maybe three unprotected first round picks, or they want some big haul players picks. And we really did think it was all going to be very picks based because usually when you're dismantling the remnants of a championship team, it's usually kind of a pseudo rebuild. And if you think that Scotty Barnes can lead you to this next era, this transition phase, you're going to rebuild young. So I don't think anybody expected it was going to be a trade that was mostly player based, right? Like they got a pick in the deal, but you thought it was going to be more player based. And so that was the third piece. So then the fourth piece, my first reactions were all about the Raptors side of it, I think. And then as I'm processing what it meant for the Knicks, one, obviously, phenomenal pickup. And they did it without having to send out any of their first round picks. Now the pick they did send is a Pistons pick that's likely to be a virtual first rounder, right? It's a second rounder that's going to be so high in the second round that, teams will tell you would rather have the 31st or 32nd pick most of the time than the 30th pick because first round picks come with guaranteed rookie scale money. Second round picks, not the case. You can negotiate for fewer years and a smaller sum. And so that the Knicks didn't have to give up any of their firsts, and they managed to pick up a player of this caliber who half the league would love OG Anunoby, right? We've heard him tied to a ton of teams. He's the kind of player who fits with everybody and would have an immediate impact with just about anybody. Um, so I was like, wow, what a great deal for the Knicks. And then I look at Twitter, and I've got a lot of Knicks fans in my feed, right? I've been living in New York for 19 years, and I used to cover the Knicks, obviously, and I've got a lot of Knicks, a lot of friends who are Knicks fans. I was getting texts from some of them. It was really interesting to watch the evolution of Knicks fans' feelings about this. And I want to say it's not like all Knicks fans, and Twitter is not representative of anything. It's always a mistake to place too much stock in it. But it was really interesting from my standpoint to see that the initial reaction to the trade seemed to be just fans being apoplectic about it. Like, oh, how could they do this? How do we give up Emmanuel quickly, especially IQ? Like, Knicks fans freaking love Emmanuel quickly, and for good reason. They're a little more split or ambivalent on RJ Barrett, there was definitely a growing frustration that he had never really popped as a number 3 overall pick. But it felt like the initial reaction was really negative, or at least emotionally, the difficulty of having to let go of Emmanuel quickly offset any happiness, it seemed like, or optimism that would come with OG Anunoby's arrival. Here we are a couple weeks later, and they're on this phenomenal winning streak. They're absolutely dominating, especially defensively. OG Anunoby fit in perfectly right off the bat. They're chanting his name at the Garden. I don't think anybody's forgotten about quickly by any stretch, and I think it's still for a lot of Knicks fans. You tell me, how you felt about it, but like I do think there was a mix of emotions there, but I think you can see these early results kind of justify exactly what the Knicks front office had in mind, right? Yeah, we're sacrificing something here, but we're gaining more, and we're gaining fit and defense and versatility. And you got to give up something to get something. And if they'd given up picks to do this instead, if the Raptors even wanted that, and clearly they did not, but if you'd done that, well, now you don't have those picks to try to make the big blockbuster that you still are hoping to make at some point. So I think the Knicks did really well here. Yes, they gave up something, but that's how you get talent in this league. You got to give up something. And the early results for the Raptors have been fantastic too. So it's it's early yet. We may feel differently about it in a few months, but right now it feels like that rare deal where you go, oh, you know what? Both sides got what they needed. They both won.
Yeah, absolutely, Howard. And I think that played into the timeline of the trade for me. I think in part, the reason this trade happened earlier was the struggles of the Raptors, where they kind of were looking to be a little more aggressive earlier. And I think we come to learn that, like you said, they obviously value the players a little bit more. The fact is, RJ Barrett, the contract had been, it's been called various names around the circles. But the fact is, he's 23 years of age. He's a homegrown player for Canada, and of course Emmanuel Quickly, who hasn't been given his second contract yet as well. So yeah, I really feel like on the surface, my reaction was a little bit of shock that it happened at the time it happened. Not
Yeah,
that the packages moving, the moving parts and all that wasn't really a huge shock to me, because normally, Harold, when a big trade like this happens, we get a little bit of a wind or a leak that, okay, the Knicks are really looking to make a move earlier. But yeah, the fact that
yeah,
it happened in early December was the main shock for me. But here we are. The Knicks are 5-0. You've probably seen some stats online that OG is 111 plus minus in the 5 games. It certainly helps that you've played the Blazers, the Bulls, and the Wizards. But they've also had an
helps.
amazing win in Philly and a
Yeah,
great win against the Timberwolves in his first game as well. But the main story for me, Howard, is how the Knicks offense has looked. There's been a little bit of teething issues with the bench now, slightly depleted, and Tibbs having to stagger the lineups as well. But yeah, with the Raptors also 3-2, and as we're recording this, a tough loss last night against the Lakers. The trade looks like it's a huge win for both teams, and I think they both get what they needed out of this trade for the short term and long term. But the biggest advantage the Knicks have, as you said, no first round picks. So how big is that for the Knicks? Like for Leon Rose, if you're grading this move, like knowing that the league wanted OG Anunoby, is this a big feather in the cap of Leon Rose? Jumping the gun and getting this deal done early with no firsts involved.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Leon Rosen and that front office deserve a ton of credit for making the deal, for making the. I think even again the construction of the deal, as you note, no first round picks going out. Um, look, they gave up a starter and a guy who was runner up for sixth man of the year, and so that's two high level rotation guys for one. But it's just really hard to get an OG Anunoby, right? Like right now, like let's play out the reality of this for a second and just put in context the relative value of these players. Um, OG Anunoby is absolutely an elite, all defensive first or second team, whatever. But he's an all defensive team type player and will be for I think years to come. And he can hit the open three. A little limited offensively, but that's fine. He's, as we said, a player that every team in the NBA would want. There aren't that many guys like him, built like him, can guard 1 through 5, long, athletic, strong, and not only thrives in that role, but wants that role, right? Like he can score a little bit. He's going to hit some open shots. He's going to get out in transition. He's going to score in other ways. He's not a go-to scorer and doesn't want to be, as far as I can tell, anyway. Which is good. You need that, and especially on a team like the Knicks, where you do have Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, who are both going to dominate the ball for long stretches of the game, and who are high usage rate guys. You need some players who can score opportunistically, but don't need the ball in their hands all the time. Don't feel like they need to be scorers. Embrace being an elite defensive player, as OG Anunoby has throughout his career. So it's hard to get those guys. And when you compare that to the two guys they gave up, so around the league, the feeling about RJ Barrett for the last couple of years has been not that he's reached his ceiling. Like people, they like the general outline of RJ Barrett, but there's been this feeling for a while, and I can remember even having these conversations 2 years ago. It just feels like he's a guy who's going to always be pretty good, not consistent enough to be great, doesn't have any one thing that he's elite at. If you're going to be a star in this league, an all-star, even an all-star once or twice, you got to have something that's identifiable that you are elite at. He doesn't have any one thing that he's elite at. He's good at a lot of different things, but he's not great at anything. And so, I don't want to insult him by saying he's kind of ordinary, but like RJ Barrett's replaceable. Emmanuel Quickly, it's interesting. I think the hard part about this for Knicks fans is that Quickly's been fantastic in Toronto. He was great for the Knicks too, but he's now a full-time starter there. He seems to fit really well next to Scotty Barnes. And he's going to have the opportunity there to really have a lot more latitude, a lot more responsibility, because they don't have a Jalen Brunson. Like they needed a new scoring, playmaking point guard to lead them and to play off of Scotty Barnes and to also lead them when Barnes is off the court. Obviously, Scotty Barnes does a lot of initiating himself too, and so he may reach even greater heights in Toronto. Will he ever be an all-star? I don't know, but the Knicks got plenty of bang for the buck in this deal, and they've still got room to grow. If Mitchell Robinson misses the rest of the season, it's going to be tough, I think, to go too deep in the playoffs or try to challenge the top of the East. But you've got another really essential piece in place now in Anunoby. And yeah, he's a free agent this summer, but one of his agents is Leon Rose's son. He's a CAA guy. Leon Rose is a CAA, formerly, head of CAA basketball. Like everybody knows, like the whole league firmly believes, this is not reporting, don't aggregate this anybody, but like the whole league firmly believes that there's a deal already there. Like that's just the reality of it. So I don't think there's any fear that OG Anunoby is going to walk away in free agency this summer. He'll be with the Knicks for years to come.
Yeah, I think that was the reassuring thing, that knowing, oh, look, the Knicks fans, adjusting and absorbing the trade, and then realizing, oh, Leon Rose is his son's agent. is the agent of OG. So here we go. Big
The
market.
NBA
Yeah,
is the Wild West. There are no rules. There are like anybody can do anything. There's tampering. Who cares? Everybody could just do what they want. So
yeah. I'll actually rewind, Harold. You probably remember 2 months ago when OG changed agents out of the blue. We saw a CAA post on Twitter saying, "Welcome to the CAA tree, OG Anunoby," after leaving
yeah,
Clutch Sports, and that was
yeah,
literally a week after a huge aggregation or report that the Knicks and Rich Paul, still not able to see eye to eye. But uh,
yeah.
look, they got it done, and what it has done is it's helped consolidate the roster.
Mhm.
Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle have looked better offensively. The spacing looks improved. Everything that you could expect, an OG and an OB addition to be so far. And we're not even at the halfway point. As I mentioned, the East is tight. But in terms of the ceiling of this team this year, you mentioned Mitch down, but with Leon Rose, all talk reports out there that he's still looking for
Yep.
another piece, whether it be a Brogdon who could back up Brunson but still start if needed, or a Dejounte Murray, a bigger piece who might need to start but can also play with the bench as well. Um, what do you feel like this team, could do with now that we've seen a little bit of OG with the team, knowing that Brunson and Randall are still going to dominate the ball, knowing that the 3-point shooting's been, extra special from Brunson this year. What do you feel like this team might need to get closer to the Bucks and the Celtics?
So that one's interesting. It's a tough one to answer. I'll start with this. I think the difficulty for the Knicks, as of this moment, right? There are obviously moves to make. What kind of move is the tricky part? So I'll get to that in a second. As they stand right now, and I'll refer to the standings themselves, right? Knicks are 22 and 15, fourth in the East, 2 games behind Philly for third, 6.5 out from Boston in first place. But they're right there firmly in the mix in the top four. The Heat and the Pacers are right on their heels. The Cavs are right there too. It's like really clustered from 4 through 8. Knicks, Heat, Pacers, Cavs, Magic. I would expect it's like that group is they're not all in the same place. And the Pacers just lost Halliburton for at least a couple of weeks. We'll see how quickly he gets better. But um, that group within itself, I'm curious to see how it shakes out because I think there is a clear top tier. I think the Celtics, Bucks, and Sixers are still the top tier. I don't think the Knicks are in there, and the reason is, and this sounds very reductive, but this is it's a superstar league, the NBA. Brunson and Randall are stars. They're not superstars at the level of a Jason Tatum or a Giannis Antetokounmpo or a Joel Embiid. And those are the three guys anchoring the three top teams in the East. And of course, the Celtics have, as it's become almost the cliche of the season, the Celtics have maybe the best top six in the league. Although the Clippers might argue the point right now and would have an argument. But the Celtics have a really incredibly strong 1 through 6 and headlined by Tatum, who's an MVP candidate. The Bucks have their issues, but they're still right there, and they've got not just Giannis but Dame Lillard, and the Sixers have the reigning MVP Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, who's absolutely going to be an All-Star and probably All NBA this season. The Knicks stars are not at the level of those other teams' stars. It's not automatic that means you can't beat them, and they will beat them at times. But can you beat them 4 out of 7? Is the only question that really matters when you get to the spring. And you're going to have to go through one or several, or one or multiple of those teams. I just don't think they're never going to have the best player on the court in those matchups, and that's still the issue for them. All that said, like Julius Randle, like he's been all over the place the last 4 years with the Knicks, right? Like he's all NBA, he's backsliding, he's all NBA again, and he's backsliding again, and you just don't know what to get from him. And Knicks fans, again, people that I follow on Twitter, friends of mine who are Knicks fans, like Randall has frustrated them so much because attitude, body language, and he's really pulled it all together this season. Like he's playing at an incredible level, maybe the best basketball of his life. My buddy Fred Katz at the Athletic had a great piece about Randall the other day. People should go check out. Um, and so I even hesitate a little bit to say that that they can't compete with those other teams. But I just know after a billion years of covering this league, it's the superstar talent that generally is decisive in a series. If you've got the best player in a series, and sometimes the best two players in a series, you're usually going to win. So the question becomes the question that you posed to me: how do you compete with those teams? How do you get on the level with those teams? I mean, one way is to try to get a third star, the old super team approach, which has kind of fallen out of fashion in the NBA after that whole super team era. Certain teams are still attempting it in forms. The Clippers could argue that they have, three superstars or three stars, whatever you think of Harden at this stage. The Suns have tried to do it, whatever you think of Beal at this stage. Some asterisks on these. Can the Knicks get a third star, or are you swapping out Randall plus stuff to get you a bigger star? I don't know who that guy is. I thought the Knicks were right to pass on Donovan Mitchell when they did. I don't think even if he were available tomorrow that he would be the answer. The DeJounte Murray thing is interesting because he's been an all-star. His defense has slipped a lot, but still, he's got size, he's got length, he can shoot. All around great dude from everything I've always heard. I think he'd be a great fit with them. He's bigger than Brunson, so I think he'd fit in that backcourt. He'd be more of a fit than say Donovan Mitchell, which would leave them with I think too small of a backcourt. But he's not a superstar, right? He's not that guy who puts you over the top. You still don't have the best player on the court if you're facing the Boston or Milwaukee's or Philadelphia's, right? So the curiosity for me is not can you make the short-term move for DeJounte Murray or Jordan Clarkson or whatever. Just they do need another playmaking guard. That's something that they lost in trading quickly in that deal. But I think if they're making a smaller move, even for DeJounte Murray, that's a mid-tier type move. Somewhere down the line in the near future, you got to think the plan is still to cobble together some contracts and picks to get the true difference maker, the top 10 type player. The problem is I don't know who's available. It was going to be at one point, oh, well, has Giannis, starting to get frustrated? Giannis, voiced some possibilities last summer. He voiced the idea that maybe I would leave if I didn't think I could win more titles in Milwaukee. Then they got Dame Lillard, and he signed an extension. I don't think we're going to hear too much noise about Giannis, in the foreseeable future. We wondered about Embiid because of the James Harden fiasco. Then they traded Harden, and that trade's worked out really well for them. And Tyrese Maxey has gone supernova. We're not hearing a lot of noise about whether Embiid might be available in the near future. So who's it going to be? I don't know who that is, and I think that's the real question here for the Knicks. You've eventually at some point you got to get the guy, or you have to figure out a way to build a team that is the greater than the sum of its part type approach. And even if you don't have the best player on the court against Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, maybe your collection and depth of talent can somehow overcome that.
Yeah, you make a lot of great points, Howard, and I feel like this is still step one. People kind of got the impression that, okay, this OG thing, it's a great move in the right direction. It's step one of the next move, and it's setting the table because he's so complementary. It's consolidating, and maybe, we can boost Quentin Grimes' play a lot more with this trade. Deuce McBride got extended, who they felt, deserves some minutes as well. So yeah, a lot of possibilities for this front office. All their first round picks are available, like you said, and we wait to see. I think it's going to be a really busy trade period. In general, now that the Knicks have made this early move, perhaps some of these East teams like the Magic, the Pacers, they want to counter with another move of their own. With the Knicks now in fourth seed, but yeah, it's always great to talk to you, Howard. So appreciate your time. Where can people find you and your latest work?
Find everything at theringer.com. You can hear me every Monday on the Real Ones podcast with Logan Murdoch and Raja Bell. And of course, you can always find me on the site I will still call and forever call Twitter at Howard Beck. If you happen to be on Blue Sky, I'm also on Blue Sky, also at Howard Beck.
Thanks. That makes a lot of sense. One day I saw your Twitter handle change. I also call it Twitter, and I thought, oh, is that the real Howard still? You just never know.
Still me, and yeah, you just never know because the doofus running Twitter not only changed the name to a ridiculous name, but he took away all the blue checks from its original purpose, which was to let the public know that this is the real Howard Beck or the real Ben Stiller, the real Barack Obama, the real whoever. I guess actually some certain public figures of a higher note than me, higher level than me, still have some sort of I think check. But they took away all the legacy checks. But that is still me, the one with the Blue Sky address as my handle.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Good to hear you well, and yeah, hopefully talk to you soon, Howard.